This is Sweet 73, a collaboration I did with Vandermill cider, bottled October 16th of 2013. This is a cider with honey from my hive that was out in Elburn, Illinois. So technically it's a cyser. Then it was aged in Jack Daniel's whiskey barrels. I have a feeling this is going to be all right. Let's find out.
Drink it or dump it.
Well, since it was CiderCon, I grabbed my Sweet 73 and headed down to First Draft Chicago, where I met Paul Vander. Then he brought a couple himself.
I can make it through this without water.
Well, here we are in another episode of Drink It or Dump It. Paul, thanks so much for hanging out and joining me.
Yeah.
So let's talk about where we are, because you had asked about this. We're at First Draft in the South Loop, and you had asked me.
Yeah, on the way over here, I asked you, was Villains near here? Because the first bar we were on draft in was Villains. And a friend of mine, Steve Smith from Grand Rapids.
Not the Steve Smith drummer from Journey.
No, that would have been cooler, actually. But no, he knew the owner here at the time, Miguel, and said, hey, we should go and put Totally Roasted on draft at Villains. Mm-hmm. And back then in 2011, we were self-distributing Chicago, which was very unique because most people wouldn't do that. And because cider is made under a wine license, I learned that the state of Illinois had a out-of-state winemaker's allowance for self-distribution up to a certain amount of product. Mm-hmm. So we thought this is a great way to target the places we want to go, and it ultimately led me to you as I researched the city and not knowing much about the city before then, and then landed us here through a...
And we walked in, and this is
we walked in and I was like, this is the old Villains.
The old Villains.
So anyway,
so to answer your question, I know exactly where Villains
yeah,
is.
thank you. Yeah, it took me right here.
First Draft.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
So when you opened and when you started Vandermill, there was this kind of explosion of craft breweries. What made you say, I'm gonna do cider?
Well, so we started originally to be a cider mill, making fresh cider, making donuts and fudge, and kind of just encapsulating that quintessential Michigan fall type of business. We got into that because my in-laws are in that business over on the east side of the state.
Okay.
Parmenter Cider Mill. It's been there for 120 years now. And you can't keep Michigan people away from a cider mill in the fall if you tried.
Totally.
So we thought, hey, look at this. This looks like a great business. And so we started.
You got cider, you got donuts, you got pie?
We got, of course, got to have pies, got to have fudge. And we were cinnamon roasting pecans and almonds, like you see in the triangle bag at the mall kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Well, being in the retail cider business, starting fresh wasn't quite as easy as we thought it would be. So we were getting into all sorts of other things, one of which was to ferment the product that we're making. So a good friend of mine from the area, Joel Brower, was a avid home brewer, and I said, hey, why don't we start fermenting cider? We've got it here. It's hard to sell. Mm-hmm. So and that is really what took our business into a new direction. We didn't set out to distribute ciders outside of Michigan, or in Michigan for that matter. We really set out to be a family-friendly retail fall-time business. And yeah, one thing led to another, and people like to drink, and we were really at the early end, or the beginning of what I would say is kind of the cider revolution of 2010 to 2015.
Right, because at the time when I was bringing into City Provisions, there wasn't a lot of cider going on. It was only in those next few years that, with the boom of craft beer, then came cider, and then seemingly came spirits. But for a moment, it was like cider was coming out of all the orifices of the country.
I lovingly refer to those days as the good old days, because when we were self-distributing, we got to choose where we were selling. So how I found you was, and I couldn't find the publication, but it must have been like a Eater or Thrillist or one of these top 10 most influential people in craft beer in Chicago, and the most influential chef was you. Michael Kaiser from Good Beer Hunting was the most influential writer in this article, and there were a couple other folks. And I thought, well, if I'm going to be a part of this community in Chicago, then I should contact these guys. So I did, and one thing led to another. I didn't know I was going to get such enthusiasm out of you, and you're going to want to come press apples. But I'm glad you did.
So am I. I'm so glad for all of it,
Yeah.
and I'm glad that more than a decade later we're still smiling with each other and having fun. Right? As you go from pressing apples to then you open a tap room, which is a whole different level of hospitality. And how did you evolve the business, or how did it change you and the way you saw the business once you have this kind of front-facing aspect, as opposed to obviously going into bars or retail shops? There's a difference between selling bottles and cans to being in the hospitality business on premise.
Yeah, I like to say we really kind of fell backwards into the restaurant business, and really, when I started this company with my wife Amanda, I was 27 years old, and I also often say you have to be a little bit naive, and being young and kind of dumb and fearless is a good way to get yourself into a problem to solve.
Certainly.
And so for us, the writing was kind of on the wall with having a tap room and a place to bring people on premise. Cider is still, well over a decade later from when we started. It still takes a lot of hand selling. People either don't know what it is, or they have an association with a different cider product that might be outside of the realm of what we're trying to offer. We often talk about sweetness in the cider industry. Those of us that are, the craft community is generally putting forward products that are not so sweet.
Right.
So it still is a bit that way, where we have to hand sell and teach people one at a time. Yes, this is a product made from apples.
But it's to the
not.
point, I don't drink cider. I don't like that sweet stuff.
Right. And so having a tap room allows us to bring people in and take the time to better express what we're doing. We have a really neat space in Grand Rapids where we overlook the production facilities. So when we're pressing, you can kind of be in the room.
And have a drink while you're
Sure.
you're watching it.
Yeah. So inspired by Lagunitas, Chicago, RIP. But I saw that catwalk and mezzanine they had, and I thought, ooh, I like that.
Oh, you have one of those?
Yeah, well, it's a mezzanine off.
Right.
Our tap room is on the second level to our production floor, so it's a nice purview of what we're trying to do. So.
And are you doing food?
Yeah, we're doing food. We're open for dinner Tuesday to Saturday, and then we do lunch on Saturday and Friday and Saturday. And human connection is really what this business is about.
Yes.
And more broadly, I think, alcohol in general, it's about, communal drinking and celebration.
Socialization.
And, all the good stuff.
Yes, exactly. And it's great to see that there's places like this place, like your local bar, who supports that whole ethos.
Yeah.
Right? And getting people to crack something open and talk about it, which is a great segue into what we have here. You brought two of your bottles, I brought one of my bottles. The inspiration for Sweet 73 was, the name comes from the Jewish year was 5773, and we released this at Rosh Hashanah, and it's apples and honey for a sweet new year, and it's honey from what I had a hive at City Provisions. Right? What do you remember about this, the time when we made this?
Well, what sticks out into my mind the most, and it's kind of dumb actually, but when I first walked into City Provisions with my wife, it was beautiful store that you built there, and I remember seeing this organic small watermelon, and you were selling it for like $15 or something like crazy. I look at my wife, I'm like, holy shit, this place is something else. But ended up being a great place to sell a premium cider. So
I didn't sell many watermelons.
No,
sold a lot of cider.
I'll bet. So yeah, I mean that's certainly what I remember from our first meeting in the space. And Rosh Hashanah was something completely new to me.
Right.
So I was excited to learn a little bit about what that all meant, and really appreciated your efforts in what got you mentioned. Obviously, in that article was your interest and your collaboration with brands, with creating new products that were unique. I think it was early in the game to do that, and definitely a unique thing in the marketplace. So for us, coming into the market in 2011, anyway, it was just a neat opportunity to create this connection, and who knew what it would turn on to after that, right?
Right.
We've been together in different forms since then.
Throughout the years.
Yeah.
So we pressed it in the fall of 2011.
Correct. Yep.
Then it sat in Jack Daniel's barrels, right?
I think they were Heaven Hill barrels.
Heaven Hill barrels?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, Heaven Hill back then were attainable.
Right. And affordable.
And affordable. And we didn't have any money, so
Right, exactly.
it was likely Heaven Hill barrels. And
Okay.
I think we sat it down for at least 6 months because we bottled it then in September of 2012.
Okay, so there's apples, there's honey, there's barrels.
Yep.
What do you expect these are gonna taste like when we open?
Well, so cider making is wine making, really. Apples are a delicate fruit. It's often, it's like a white wine. We want to ferment cold. We want to ferment kind of slow and healthy. We're trying to retain those delicate aromas and flavor profiles of apple. And most of the apples that we use are what we call Main Street varieties, where you can buy them at the store. It's
Right.
mostly what Michigan and the United States is growing for the fresh market. So those are all delicate flavors. So adding honey to it, you're essentially adding more fermentable sugar in the beginning. So we added this honey to the must, which is why it ferments out to about 8.5% alcohol.
A little higher for a cider.
A little higher than a normal cider. It's actually classified, I believe,
As a
as a specialty honey wine. It has to be on here. You have to distinguish. So wine made from 75% apples and 25% honey, and that's the amount of fermentable sugar.
Right.
Is that breakdown? So
Gotcha.
this is pre-filtration days for us.
Okay.
So those characteristics would lead you to believe that you can let this thing age for considerable time and it should be relatively stable. That being said, I brought 2 bottles. I don't think you'll be able to see this on camera, but this one is definitely clouded up, and then yours and this other one that I brought are still very clear. So I'm going to bet we might have a drink it and a dump it.
Okay.
But who knows? We're going to have to find out. But I'm guessing that we've got something pretty good in one of these.
The question is, which one do we want to do first?
I think we should go with one that has maintained its clarity, so that we start out hopefully with a positive note here.
Why don't we pour them all,
That's a good idea.
and then we'll see what's going on. All right, first mine. Okay, and yours. Okay,
Look at that one.
all right.
Now, we wouldn't expect any overcarbonation here because we did not put, there's no residual sweetness in this product. So what I would hope that we're going to experience is that we get, I'd like to smell honey, but you won't have sweetness from honey because it's all been turned to alcohol. So if you open an old beer, or if you open something that has product to work with still in the bottle, you can obviously get a re-fermentation. You
Right.
can have more going on, but
And I've experienced that in some of the other bottles I've opened, a lot of
I can smell it from here.
re-fermentation.
So we're gonna try yours first.
That's for you.
Okay. Quite clear yet? Cheers.
Yeah.
I can definitely smell the barrel.
Yeah.
The honey is there, but it's pretty subtle.
It's muted.
Yeah, but it smells. I mean,
It does smell nice. So I wanted to talk about barrel aging when it comes to ciders and the science behind it. This has apples, it has honey, then it goes in the barrel. Is it different than aging a beer?
It is different. There's always somewhat of an oxidative concern and/or character that can develop. Oxidation's not the worst thing to have happen as long as it doesn't overdo it. Cider, like I said, is quite subtle. So barrel aging, it can get intense quick.
Right.
Cider will pick up flavor from things a lot faster.
Yeah.
So we see that as we make new products and add other nuanced flavors to different cider products, that it really will pick up and deliver what you're adding to it.
What do you think?
I'm having a hard time not smiling
I
because
know.
it's delicious.
I know.
It's
I'm
delicious.
smiling as well. This is 1,000% drinking it.
Yeah, it's really good. I think the time that it has, I mean, the barrel and vanilla and honey are very subtle. I like the color that it's picked up. Honey, adds a little bit of that. Again, a little bit of slight oxidation can add a bit of color to cider as well. But
Reminder, it's been in this bottle for 12 and a half years.
yeah,
That's
right.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
doesn't-
You'll have to post the picture I sent from the dusty box I had to bury out of
I will.
the back of the cidery.
So this is yours,
Yeah.
and the color is different. The color's lighter.
Yep,
It's more straw than golden.
yep. That's probably that oxidative property.
Get in the nose a little.
Yep.
The difference is wild.
This has lost a little bit of that flavor profile, I think.
The fullness of
Yeah.
the apple to honey flavor.
It's a little thinner on the palate and in the flavor, but it's clean. I mean, it's pretty darn clean.
If I hadn't tasted this would still be fine. What do you attribute the difference to? Is it how it was stored?
Again, for cider, you've got volatile acidity, oxidation, all these different things that could very easily be considered flaws. If those flaws become distracting to to the experience. A little bit of oxidation, a little bit of volatile acidity, so long as that's just adding a hint of character to it, it can go from flaw to attribute.
Right.
So I think that this is still more attribute than flaw, but
Fair enough.
not standing up near as well as the first bottle.
This one-
and I think it's probably either in the package. I mean, they all came out of the same barrel,
Right.
So it's probably just age and package.
It's almost like with this one, the peels of the apples were scraped up against the inside of the barrel. Like the finish in my mouth is what I'm getting. Whereas this one is more about the meat of the apple. It's like you're eating an apple.
Yeah, I think this has held on to barrel character a little bit better as well, the first one.
More depth of flavor.
Yeah. Dark
Let's
horse.
see how it goes.
All right. So this one definitely had something going on.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's got a little extra fuzz to it.
Look at that. That looks like a Weiss beer.
Ooh, yeah. That's not ideal.
It's interesting because when it hits your tongue and you get that effervescence, for me, I was almost afraid of what was next.
Yeah, and
You
then
know?
and then you were right to be.
Well,
It's not that scary. I mean,
if you give this to someone and don't tell them what it is, they'd probably go,
They would
"That's
drink it.
That's yeah,
Interesting.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
What is it?" And then you tell them, they'd be like, "Huh?" It's almost like it changed its attitude.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about Totally Roasted.
We and the Totally Roasted came about when we were self-distributing Michigan also, and one of our first early customers in Grand Rapids was a place called the Greenwell, and I had a friend of mine, Todd, that was managing there, and I wasn't real great at sales back then because I couldn't hardly get past the first or second stop before I'd start sharing in swimming in my own product and hanging out with folks.
Yeah.
But
Happens.
we were having some fun, and I said, you know, we ought to make a cider that's unique to you guys. Let's come up with something fun. What do you want to do? And so one of the chefs had come out, and we were talking about it, and I mentioned one of the products that we make at the cider mill is cinnamon roasted pecans and cinnamon roasted almonds. And I said, well, we could do that. That's kind of that perfect fall flavor profile. And back then, there really was not, there were not many people putting things in cider like that. And that influence really came a lot out of craft beer.
Was there a single beer, what will send you into the rabbit hole of craft beer? Was there one beer or even a cider that did that for you?
There were not a lot of ciders when we started.
Right.
There were a few producers in Michigan that were putting some fermented cider in a wine bottle. My entry into, or my exposure to the craft market really came in college because I was went to college in Holland, Michigan, which is where New Holland is from. So when I was a sophomore, after spending my youngest years just learning how to drink any light beer that I could, and then a friend of mine was working with New Holland, and so as a sophomore, I would go down there and bottle on the weekends for a couple hours, and we got paid in beer.
Nothing wrong with that one.
Those days don't really exist anymore, but I was pretty excited about it. So they had a brand called Courage that they show, that they'll reboot every once in a while, and Old Poet, and it was really my exposure to beer with flavor.
Right.
And then once you kind of jump in that rabbit hole,
Old Poet's their oatmeal stout. Right?
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. It's a good beer.
Yeah. What are you excited for this year, or what's next for Vandermill?
We've got to start having fun again in order to get people interested in what we're doing.
Yeah. And if you're having fun, they're having fun.
It sounds so simple, but it isn't. I mean, you really have to, and we've regained some of that perspective where it's like, okay, let's put some of those difficulties behind us and focus on what it is that we do, which really works out well for us to be focusing on the apple again as well.
So what do you tell people who have cider in their cellars?
Check if it's cloudy and if it's supposed to be, because that'd be an indicator for sure.
But overall, we're going to rate Sweet 73.
2 thumbs up for sure.
2 thumbs up. Drink them all.
Yeah, I would say to people, look for a cyser. They're a fun product, and it's a neighbor to cider, and I'll bet you can find some older ones out there too because they age well. But
well, cheers.
Yeah, here.
You need some more.
Cut me off with a clear one.
Good thing I can
with a drink it.
Know what it is. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers. That is good.
That is good. You wouldn't guess it's 8.5% either.
No, and you wouldn't have from the onset of it. I think it never tasted like a hot apple, right?
Right.
Alcohol.
Yeah. There's a Vandermill tag right there. Right back there. Nice. Totally roasted going on draft.